I've chosen my favourite scientist as being Alan Turing, and he's one of the most famous mathematicians that have ever lived, that have made substantial impact on three main areas of science. Okay, and that's largely computer science and computational biology, and he's also well known for potentially saving many lives in World War II by cracking the German Enigma codes. His main war contribution was at Bletchley Park being able to decipher the German Enigma codes, which the German Navy were using to transmit plans and their operations. And within a few weeks of joining Bletchley Park, Turing was able to modify a machine that could decipher these Enigma codes very quickly, therefore help to counter the German movements and potentially save thousands of lives, bringing the war to a quicker conclusion. What else appeals to me really relates to the work that he did as an undergraduate. He developed a mathematical formalism for general computation. So being able to compute a function. This was the beginning of, if you like, computer science as a discipline as we know it, and the notion of computation. Alan Turing is the founder of computer science because he's the one who developed, if you like, that initial idea about what an algorithm is and what we define an algorithm for. Another thing that Alan Turing is incredibly famous for, particularly in the area of artificial intelligence, is that very notion of how do we know when a machine is behaving intelligently? What Turing did was to develop the Turing test. Basically, the Turing test states if a human interrogator cannot determine whether the subject, through dialogue, is a computer or a person, then whatever it is, it must be intelligent. Well, if we go back to when he was 16 and he had his first love affair, and it is well known that he was homosexual, and this person died early, and it had a profound impact on Turing, and it had him really contemplating life, faith, and actually whether life was truly just materialistic and that could be described through mathematics. And therefore, we're living beings, and therefore intelligence can be modelled. And he wanted to rationalise, I think, the emotions that he was feeling, and he wanted to rationalise it in a very academic context. And therefore he set about trying to look for patterns. And certainly that was one of his specialities. That was one of his skills, seeing patterns in things around him that others really didn't see. Obviously, he was well aware of Darwin's work, and what Darwin gave us was the fact that beings, biological systems, adapt according to local conditions, and therefore patterns become encoded in genes, and those patterns may or may not filter down to offspring. But what Darwin didn't say, and that Turing was interested in, was how these patterns and variations actually form. Through his study of biological systems, it was Turing's view that in an embryo where you have many identical cells, what he felt was that chemicals were actually being introduced into the embryo that were then somehow forcing these cells to start to self-organise. What he was able to do was build up some kind of elegant, simple mathematical model that was actually able to describe, say, the patches on a cow, the spots on a cheetah. So it was a way in which showing how in an inanimate system, collection of objects, they can, under certain conditions, spontaneously self-organise into more complex things. Well, you would have thought that somebody who potentially saved countless lives in the Second World War through deciphering all of these Enigma codes would have not just been given an OBE, but probably a knighthood. But unfortunately, he was a victim of the times and the prejudice that were apparent in society and the judiciary system. He was homosexual, and unfortunately, not long after his discovery of morphogenesis, he had a liaison with an unsavoury character who basically ended up trying to burgle Turing. Turing called the police, and this person complained to the police about what kind of relationship they'd had. Turing was unfortunately prosecuted for gross indecency and was given two options. One was prison, and one was to undergo chemical castration through taking female hormones. And he opted for the latter and spiralled into a depression. And unfortunately, in 1954, he laced an apple with cyanide and took a bite. And unfortunately, he died. And so we'll never know what potential kind of further advances could have been realised with that fantastic mind.